Diplomatic flare-up is breaking out between the White House and China, just one day after Secretary of State Blinken's historic fence-mending meeting with China's President Xi Jinping. President Biden has created a furor in Beijing today over that off-the-cuff remark. The off-the-cuff remarks were at an off-camera political fundraiser in California, one of 4 he did last night. And Biden called Xi a dictator and suggested the Chinese leader was embarrassed because he did not know in advance that the Chinese spy balloon was flying over the U.S. last winter before it was shot down. Speaking to NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer on Monday, Blinken suggested it was time to move on from the balloon incident.
So with Beijing, the balloon incident is over. It's water under the bridge?
We did what we needed to do to protect our interests. We said what we needed to say and made clear what we needed to make clear in terms of this not happening again. And so, as long as it doesn't, that chapter should be closed.
Well, not exactly, because today, angry reaction from Beijing, with a spokesman for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying the remarks are, quote, extremely absurd and irresponsible, accusing the president of seriously violating diplomatic protocol and seriously infringing on China's political dignity, which is an open political provocation. These are very strong words. And joining us now, NBC's White House correspondent Mike Memoli from San Francisco. Mike, President Biden appears to have blown up a lot of the goodwill that Secretary Blinken created. What is the White House saying? Because as Secretary Blinken is now flying back from London from a meeting on Ukraine there, they were hoping that this would lead to the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, going to Beijing, the Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, going to Beijing. That's what China wants for its economy. And then, of course, a meeting with Xi Jinping and the president here in the U.S. when the APEC meeting takes place in November on the West Coast.
That meeting set to take place right here in San Francisco, Andrea, in fact. And as I've been reaching out to White House officials all morning, there's been no effort yet to either clarify what the president meant last night or even to walk back his comments about Xi Jinping being, in his view, a dictator. But you have to also put this in context, of course, Andrea. For the better part of the last 5 or 6 years, former Vice President and then President Biden has been talking about China and Russia together as autocracies, of which we are framing the competition of the 21st century as this battle between autocracies and democracy. I think more concerning to the Chinese, likely provoking that harsh response that we're seeing, is what else the president said as he referred to Xi as a dictator. The fact that, recalling that spy balloon incident, the silly spy balloon incident, as the president has called it, that Xi Jinping himself was not aware of where it was located over the U.S., that he was not fully briefed as the leader of the Chinese government about that. That is what's most concerning, perhaps, to the Chinese here. Now, the reaction I think all of us are most interested in is what Secretary Blinken thought when he learned of these remarks. But as you're reporting, Andrea, this is somebody who has worked for Biden for now more than 20 years, going back to their days on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee together. And so it will be interesting to see how we proceed. This is so notable, Andrea, as well, the context in which the president made these remarks. We've seen it before. I was here in 2008 when Biden, newly minted as Barack Obama's running mate on the presidential ticket, talked about before an audience of fundraisers how that Barack Obama, if he were elected, would be tested by an international crisis on the world stage. That created a crisis within the campaign briefly. In 2020, during his campaign, Biden also talked fondly about his interactions with segregationist senators. So this is a setting in which we've heard Biden go off script in a big way before and cause headaches, but this one is certainly a bigger one on a diplomatic scale.
And Mike, let's pull back the curtain a little bit and explain how these fundraisers work, because one person can go in, a pooler, to take notes, one or another, but no cameras, no audio that we can play, and they have a transcript of it. And he's speaking. It's the West Coast. It's late at night. He's done 4 of these, plus that meeting on artificial intelligence earlier in the day. So he's had a very busy schedule. And this is how he, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton at these events sometimes say things. Clinton with deplorables, Obama talked about guns out there in San Francisco, get themselves in trouble because they become more relaxed when you don't see a camera platform and you're surrounded by donors who want to hear the inside stuff and you kind of get too casual, right?
That's right. They certainly want to get their money's worth, Andrea. And you're right to set up that context, because the donors here, the president often will have some private time with the hosts of the event before he makes these formal remarks, rather unscripted as they are, to the donors. And sometimes the conversations they're having in private spill into what ends up coming out in these comments. I was struck as well, Andrea, the vice president was also fundraising yesterday. We're seeing that in full force by the Biden team with the fundraising deadline. And her comments at a fundraiser in Dallas were almost identical to the kinds of comments she gives at these fundraisers routinely. She is much more scripted in that regard. But the president also has a lot on his mind. He's set to leave San Francisco this hour to return to Washington. Tonight he has a private dinner with the Indian Prime Minister Modi ahead of a state dinner tomorrow. And the context in which Biden made these remarks about China came up as he was talking about the Quad. India is, of course, a member of a Quad, a relationship, an alliance that is really about continuing U.S. efforts to counterbalance Chinese influence in the region. And so China very much on the president's mind at this point.
You know, and one other point is that perhaps trying to find a silver lining to all this, officials are saying, well, you know, at least the Republicans can't keep criticizing us for being soft on China because we're calling them dictators. And also that he called him a dictator or an autocrat in the State of the Union. And there was a suggestion that they might be as upset about that. The difference, though, is this is the timing, right on the heels of the Blinken visit, as you so well know. Mike Memoli,